The church smelled like lilies and polished oak, too clean, too perfect for the kind of goodbye I was about to give. I sat in the front row, black dress smooth against my knees, fingers tracing the edge of the silk gloves Grandma had given me last Christmas. The air was heavy with whispered condolences, but I barely heard any of them. My eyes were fixed on the tall mahogany doors at the back. And then they walked in. My parents. It had been 15 years since they left me with Grandma and disappeared. Not a call, not a birthday card, not a single "How are you?" But now, dressed in designer black and fake grief, they were here. Not for her. For the $38 million everyone knew she left behind. I felt my chest tighten, but my face didn't move. I'd learned the art of composure from Grandma. Chin high, voice steady, heart locked. My father's gaze flicked toward me, then quickly away, like I was some ghost he didn't expect to see. My mother just clutched her pearls, pretending not to notice the irony. When the lawyer approached me, whispering that I'd be the one to speak before the will was read, I almost smiled. Grandma had planned this, every second of it. And when I finally stood, the sound of my heels on the marble echoed louder than any prayer. I was 17 the day my parents decided I wasn't worth the trouble anymore. It started with shouting, the kind that shakes walls and makes neighbors listen through thin windows. My father's voice cut through the house like broken glass. You either move with us to Chicago, or you stay here and figure out your life on your own. My life. At 17. My mother stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes cold. She had this way of looking at me like I was some bad investment she regretted. All because I didn't want to leave Grandma, the only person who ever made me feel like I wasn't a mistake. I'm not going, I said, voice shaking but steady enough. Grandma needs me. My mother scoffed. She's old, Claire. She'll die soon, and then what? You think you can survive without us? The lump in my throat burned, but I refused to cry. I already am. That was the moment it happened. My father's hand slammed against the doorframe, his final verdict echoing through the hall. Then you're no daughter of mine. The door shut behind them, and just like that, silence filled the house. I remember collapsing in the kitchen, trying to breathe between sobs, until I felt Grandma's arms around me. She didn't say much, just held me, stroking my hair like she used to when I was a child. Then she pressed something into my hand, a small gold locket with her initials engraved on it. Keep this close, sweetheart, she whispered. When people show you what they value, believe them, and then value yourself more. That night, I opened the locket and saw a faded photo of her as a young woman. Strong, smiling, unstoppable. I wore it to school the next morning and every day after that, a reminder that love doesn't leave, even when people do. From that day forward, I promised myself one thing. If they could walk away from me so easily, I'd make sure they'd never be able to walk back in the same way again. The first few years after they left were the hardest, not because of what I lost, but because of what I had to rebuild. Grandma's house became my world. It smelled of vanilla candles and lavender detergent, a blend that made even bad days feel survivable. She believed in structure, discipline, and faith, not the religious kind, but the kind you build in yourself. At 18, I worked 2 part-time jobs while taking online business classes. Grandma would pack sandwiches for me, always with a handwritten note tucked inside. Keep going, my brave girl. I kept every single one of those notes, stored in a box under my bed like they were gold. When I was 21, Grandma encouraged me to start something of my own, something I loved. I'd always been obsessed with design, how color and shape could make people feel something. So, with $1,200 in savings and an old laptop that overheated every 30 minutes, I started my own interior design business out of her kitchen. The first few clients came from word of mouth, small projects, small paychecks, big lessons. I learned how to draft contracts, negotiate without apology, and make late-night coffee runs my best friend. There were times I wanted to quit, but Grandma's voice always echoed. Resilience doesn't mean you don't break. It means you learn how to rebuild prettier. By 25, I met someone who would change everything, Victoria Hayes, an established designer who saw something in me I didn't yet see in myself. She became my mentor, my anchor, and my mirror. "You've got the kind of eye people pay fortunes for," she told me once, sipping black coffee in her Manhattan studio. "Don't you dare waste it hiding." So I stopped hiding, at least professionally. My business grew faster than I ever imagined. By 30, I had contracts with luxury hotels, magazines, and even one celebrity whose penthouse I redesigned. The money came, the recognition followed, but I never posted it online. No flashy updates, no bragging rights. I learned to let silence speak for me. To the world, I was just Claire Adams, a woman who lived quietly, traveled occasionally, and sent flowers to her grandmother every Sunday. But behind that quiet, I was building something extraordinary. The only person who ever knew the full truth was Grandma. She'd sit in her armchair, wrapped in her wool blanket, smiling at the magazine spreads featuring my work. "You did this without them," she'd say softly. "And you did it with heart." When she passed, I thought the pain might swallow me whole. But even in her absence, she left me direction, her estate, her values, and one final secret I hadn't yet discovered. Until now. Because as I sat in that church, waiting for the lawyer to read her will, I realized Grandma had orchestrated something far bigger than a farewell. She'd planned a reckoning. The church had grown unbearably quiet by the time the lawyer stood at the podium. Even the sound of the rain tapping against the stained glass windows seemed to hush itself. I sat still, back straight, eyes fixed on the mahogany casket at the front. Grandma had always loved grandeur, but this was her final masterpiece. My parents sat 3 pews behind me, whispering like they were planning something. My father's cufflinks glinted each time he moved his hand, and my mother adjusted her diamond earrings, pretending not to stare at me. She'd aged well. Money always did a good job hiding decay. The lawyer cleared his throat and unfolded the document. As per the last will and testament of Eleanor Whitmore. A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Grandma's name had power. Even in death, she commanded attention. "The estate, valued at $38 million, shall be distributed according to the instructions written here." My mother's chin lifted. My father sat forward, hands clasped tightly. The lawyer continued, his voice measured. "To my daughter, Margaret, and her husband, Daniel, I leave the sum of $1 each, as a reminder that true wealth cannot be built on abandonment." You could have heard a pin drop. My parents froze. My mother's face flushed crimson. My father blinked twice like he couldn't comprehend the words. $1 each. That was it. "And to my granddaughter, Claire Adams," the lawyer said, glancing up to find me in the crowd, "I leave everything else. All properties, holdings, accounts, and intellectual assets. She has proven that love, courage, and perseverance are worth more than inheritance." The silence that followed was electric. Every eye turned to me. My father's jaw tightened. My mother's lips parted, but no words came out. I stood slowly, feeling the weight of their gaze. My heels clicked softly against the marble as I approached the front. I didn't plan to speak, but something in me, maybe Grandma herself, pushed the words to my lips. "I didn't come here for money," I began, my voice calm, low, and steady. "I came here to honor the only person who ever stayed when everyone else left." My father shifted in his seat, muttering something under his breath. I ignored him. "You left me," I continued, turning toward them. "You left a 17-year-old girl to fend for herself because she chose love over convenience. And now you're here for her fortune, not her memory." My mother's eyes glistened, but I couldn't tell if it was guilt or embarrassment. Probably both. I took a deep breath. Grandma once told me that money doesn't change people, it just shows you who they already are. I think she was right. Gasps echoed softly from the pews behind them. Then I turned to the lawyer. "Is there more?" He hesitated, flipping a page. "There is a note, Miss Adams, handwritten by Mrs. Whitmore." He handed it to me. Grandma's handwriting, slanted, graceful, stared back at me. I read aloud. "My darling Claire, if they show up, let them see what love built. Let them see you, the life they forfeited when they walked away." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let my voice break. "They've seen it," I whispered. As I stepped down, the crowd parted, eyes following every movement. My parents sat still, pale and stunned, realizing they hadn't just lost a fortune. They'd lost the right to claim me, too. The reception after the funeral was held at Grandma's estate, a sprawling mansion that sat on a hill overlooking the coast. The sky was overcast, the ocean restless, as if nature itself understood the tension that followed us from the church. I stood near the grand piano in the drawing room, sipping black coffee instead of champagne. Her portrait hung above the fireplace, Eleanor Whitmore, regal and defiant, smiling as if she knew this moment would come. My parents eventually approached, hesitant, their steps echoing across the marble floor. For a moment, I saw flashes of the people they used to be, young, ambitious, proud. But the warmth that should have been between us had died long ago. "Claire," my mother started softly, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "We didn't mean for things to turn out this way. You have to understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted, setting down my cup. "You made choices. So did I." My father cleared his throat. "You don't have to shut us out. We're still your family." "Family?" I repeated, a dry laugh escaping before I could stop it. "You gave that title away when you walked out." They fell silent. The sound of waves crashed in the distance, steady, unbothered. I took a breath, feeling Grandma's words echo in my chest. "When people show you what they value, believe them." "I'm not heartless," I said finally. "Grandma wouldn't have wanted me to be. But if you expect help, it comes with conditions." Their eyes lit up, hope flickering like a weak flame. "First," I said, "the charity fund she started for abandoned children. You'll contribute to it. Publicly. Every year. And not for attention, for accountability." My mother nodded slowly, unsure. My father crossed his arms. "Second," I continued, "you'll sell that vacation home in Aspen and donate the proceeds. Call it cleansing old greed." My father frowned. "That's absurd." "What's absurd?" I said, stepping closer, "is pretending you loved a woman you ignored for 15 years just to get her money." Silence again. "Third," I said, voice soft but final, "you'll visit her grave every year on her birthday. Together. No cameras, no lawyers, no excuses." My mother's eyes filled with tears this time, real ones maybe. She nodded, whispering, "Okay." My father stared at me for a long time, then finally said, "And if we don't?" I smiled faintly. "Then you get what she left you, $1. And not a penny more." He looked away, jaw tight. My mother reached for his arm, but he pulled it back. For the first time in my life, they seemed small. Not because I'd humiliated them, but because they'd finally seen who they'd become. Grandma had always said that wealth wasn't about money. It was about peace. Standing there, surrounded by everything she built, I realized I finally had both. A few weeks passed before the noise around Grandma's will faded. The tabloids lost interest, the whispers stopped, and the house grew quiet again, the kind of quiet that felt earned. I spent most mornings walking through the garden she planted decades ago, the one filled with wild roses and white hydrangeas. She used to tell me that flowers taught patience. "You can't rush something that's meant to bloom," she'd say. One morning, as the fog lifted over the ocean, I saw two figures by the gate. My parents. They weren't dressed in designer clothes this time, just simple, somber outfits. My mother carried a small bouquet of tulips, Grandma's favorite. They didn't come up the path. They just stood there, staring at the headstone where Grandma's name gleamed softly in the sun. For once, there was no anger in me, only a quiet ache. Maybe they were trying, in their own imperfect way. Maybe that was enough. I didn't interrupt. I let them have their moment. Later that afternoon, I sat by the fireplace with a cup of chamomile tea and the gold locket in my hand. The photo inside was fading, the metal worn smooth from years of touch. It felt warm, alive, like Grandma was still here somehow. I thought about everything she'd taught me. How to forgive without forgetting, how to stay soft without being weak, how to turn pain into something that blooms. My life wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about legacy. I opened my journal, the one where I kept her letters, her advice, and my dreams, and wrote a single line at the bottom of a blank page. They came for her fortune, but what they found was the woman they never had the courage to raise. I closed the book, smiling through the tears, and whispered into the stillness, "You were right, Grandma. Love really was the richest thing you left me." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of roses through the open window. It felt like her answer, soft, certain, and eternal.